So what I suggest in terms of agenda then, Elham, if you had some short questions, let's deal with those first of all. And then we'll get into verbs. We'll do some verbs, past tense, future tense, have and would, to your point. We'll do all of that for a while. And then if we have time, we'll maybe go over some of the vocabulary, Anjali, and look at example sentences. We'll just practice it. We'll say various things using those words, yeah? I'll give you practice. Yeah, sound good?
Okay, okay, yeah.
All right.
That sounds good.
So Elham, what was your quick questions, first of all, from the last time?
Thank you. First one is, you said a sentence like people disapprove and tut, and you started like,
yeah,
I couldn't understand, I couldn't find the word tut in the internet.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. I haven't looked for it either. Okay. Yeah, so tut is a gesture that we have, and I don't know if this translates to other geographies. Like, you know, the way in the UK and also in America, to show approval, we would nod our heads. Yeah, we do a physical gesture. And we shake our heads when you know, when we want to indicate no. Yeah.
Yes, and we do the same in Iran.
Yeah.
Find the, you know, the spell so that I can remember it in future.
Yeah. So, and then in India, you've got the head bob, Anjali, which I love, right? Which is this shaking of the head side to side. We don't have that at all. But
like for no we do that.
Yeah, for no you do that, but then you also do this bob here, this one here.
I don't know. What is that?
Yeah, yeah, every Indian does that. They do. And it means I understand.
Oh, okay. I have never like noticed that. Yeah, we do that.
I can't believe you haven't noticed this. This is so noticeable. And one of the first books I ever read about India was called Shantaram. I read it in 2007. And it's a brilliant story about a guy who was white. He was from Australia, actually. And I'll talk about this book for a little minute. It's very interesting. And he taught me, my first foretaste of trying to understand Indian culture was reading that book, because he was a foreigner, right? And he went to Bombay. But the story before that, and it's a true story, the story was that unfolds as you read the book. It doesn't explain it all at the start. You have to read through the story to then understand what was going on at the beginning. It doesn't tell you at the start. But you would all like it because he uses very rich lingo, very rich language, right? And it starts off, basically, he's in prison in Australia. And he's in prison for armed robbery, you see.
What robbery?
Armed robbery. Arms
Okay.
with guns and things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll not prolong this too long. I'll just sort of get to the point. But the reason so the question I had in my mind was, how can this guy who's an armed robber use such rich language? I couldn't understand that because it's very rich language. But as the story unfolds, you discover that he's a journalist, right? So he's a man of words. David Gregory Roberts is his name. David Gregory? I think that's his name. And the reason why he was in prison was he separated from his wife, and they had a daughter, and the wife got custody of his daughter, and so he couldn't see his daughter, and it was driving him insane. Like, it was just driving him bananas. And so he ended up taking to drugs. So this relatively respectable individual who's a journalist ended up injecting himself, and then he got low on cash. He was spending so much money on drugs, and so he saw an opportunity to help out with the robbery. He wasn't doing the robbing, but he was driving the car, the getaway car. Anyway, he got arrested, and he got 20 years, and there was no opportunity for parole, and so he decides he's going to escape from this prison, and it's very exciting. His escape. He and one other guy escaped from prison in Australia, and he fled to New Zealand. And he figured, they'll catch me here. I'm not that far away. I need to go somewhere like where I could really disappear. And he thought about India. So he booked a flight to India and got to Bombay. And then he initially went in the hotel, but the way in a hotel you have to present your passport. He thought, they'll track my passport here. So he then thought about a slum, and he went into a slum. So this white guy went into a slum. And there he lived for quite a period of time. And because he had a little medical kit, he didn't know anything about medicine, but he had a wee medical kit, that you would, if you were traveling, for cuts and bruises. The people saw this, you see, and thought he was some kind of medical person, so he was appointed the slum doctor. And then the story unfolds is very interesting. It happens in the 80s, and he ends up joining the mafia. He ends up then going to Afghanistan and fighting with Mujahideen. I mean, it's just an amazing story. Anyway, that's a long way to say. One of the things, the first characters he met in India was a guy called Prabhu. And Prabhu was he spoke Marathi. And so he ended up teaching him both Hindi and Marathi. And he was very unusual for a Ferengi to speak Marathi. And there's some very interesting things happen because he can understand what people are saying, even though they don't think he can understand what they're saying. Very interesting. But anyway, Prabhu explains to him about the head bob. He explains it to him. Yeah. And so that's when I read all about it. And one of the things that it said was, if people who are not Indian do the head bob, Indians go nuts. They just go, they're so delighted, and they all head bob back. So I've tried this out, and it's true. You head bob at some Indians, and they all do it back. So there you go. But anyway, he explained that it doesn't mean yes and it doesn't mean no. It means yes, I understand, sir. I don't necessarily agree, but typically I'm the servant, and I am hearing what you're instructing me or telling me, and I understand, but it doesn't mean to say I'm going to do it. I thought that was very insightful into the Indian psyche. So there you go. You can now get a chance to defend yourself.
Yeah, okay, that is interesting.
Yeah, okay. Speechless. So there you go. Right. So I got onto that because we were talking about gestures. So one gesture that we have is the tut, which expresses disapproval. So if you were doing something that I didn't approve of, I could do this. Tut, 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 tut. We don't say tut, we tut like this. Right? Now, this happens very rarely. I can't remember the last time I tutted at anybody, right? I mean, we don't go around tutting every day. But tutting is an expression of disapproval. So that's what a tut is. Does that answer your question, Elham?
Yes, and please tell me the spelling of the word.
Well, I thought it was T-U-T.
T-U-T?
Yeah, I think so. Let me just check. I will just. Google wants me to tut-tut. So it's in the dictionary as tut-tut. T-U-T-T-U-T. An exclamation of disapproval or annoyance.
I see.
So let me share my screen with you guys. There you go. Can you see that?
Yes, thank you.
Tut-tut. Exclamation used to express disapproval or annoyance. Tut. This is also written out. Tut-tut, Robin, you disappoint me. Tut-tuts of disapproval. An exclamation. Aunt Mary tut-tutted at all the goings on. So, so it's something that's kind of built into, everyone is aware of it. Like, you know, you might do this 10 times in your life, right? I mean, you just don't do it very often. I couldn't tell you the last time I heard somebody actually articulate a tut, right?
Yeah, I know.
It's very, very, very rare, but everybody knows it.
Yes, thank you. And the second one, you two words, hark and hark back.
I got the two words. What was the other word?
Hark and hark back.
No, I'm not getting you. Let's go to chat. Write in chat what you're saying.
Okay. So I'm pronouncing it wrong. Hark and
Oh yeah, hark
back.
Hark back. Yep, got you now. Okay, we're on the same page.
And the meaning in the dictionary online was hark was listening, and hark back was going back to the previous subject of the talk. But I think you didn't use this word, these two words in the same meanings that I could find on the internet.
Okay. I can't remember the context now in which I used it, to be perfectly honest. But let's just talk. Let's talk about these words, hark and hark back. There's a carol we sing at Christmas time called "Hark the Herald Angels Sing," and that would have this idea of listening. You know, listen. Hark back. Yeah. So yeah. So but these words have, these two expressions are different. Okay. Hark. This is funny. This is one of these words that you don't actually use very frequently. So let me just look it up on the internet again and see what it's saying. Hark define.
And you were talking about the manners you teach your kids, and you said you ask children to hark back to older people, like answering back to their question like that, I guess.
Well, yeah. And manners, we would teach children not to answer back, but we wouldn't use hark in that context. We would say you don't answer back, which means that what we mean by that is when an adult asks a child to do something, we expect the child to obey and not answer back. That's not the same as hark back. Hark means something totally different, right? So these are separate concepts entirely. So we try to teach our children that when an adult asks you to do something, you do it. You don't say, but I can't do that because. We teach them to do it. It's good manners to do what you're told, basically. So is that clear, right?
Yes.
Right. So that's what we teach in terms of manners. That's what we teach our children. Now, harking and harking back are totally different things. Let me share a screen and we'll investigate what the internet says, and then I'll add my 2 cents in the end, right? So let me find my Zoom again, and I'll share. Right. So here it's saying hark is listen. Okay. Hark he knocks. Right. So that's the meaning of hark, is listen. Let's hear how it's pronounced.
Hark.
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 Very simple. Let's look up the American definition. Harked, harking, harks. To pay close attention. Okay, so hark is quite simple. Okay, but if we were to look at hark back, that's got a totally different meaning. Right, let's read this. Mention or remember something from the past. It was such a rotten holiday, why hark back to it? Evoke an older style or genre. The paintings hark back to Constable and Turner. Now this second definition is how I would use it mostly. Okay, harks back to it's a reminder of something in the past. It could be used negatively or positively. You know, you can look at a kind of a house and you say, it harks back to Georgian times. So it's got some kind of reminisce about it to older times. That's what harking back means.
Is it so? Is it similar to nostalgia?
What, give me that again, Anjali. To what?
It's nostalgia. Nostalgia.
Nostalgia.
Yeah.
That is an extremely astute comment. Yes is the answer to that. It's nostalgic. But yes, very good. I'm impressed. You know that word. Nostalgia is always positive. And you would use that like this. You'd say, oh, it's very nostalgic. It reminds me of a better time, a good time in the past. That's how you would use it.
Yeah.
I bet you if we looked up synonyms for nostalgic, harks back, you'd find that they're interchangeable in that way. It was very nostalgic listening to that piece of music. It just reminded me of that time in the 80s. Yeah, that would be how you'd use nostalgia.
So nostalgia is only for positive, like
yeah,
memories, and hark back is for both positive and negative.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'll do is let's just see if we can find a comparison. It's kind of interesting when you do this. I like trying to find this. You can't always do that. Hark back versus nostalgia. To see if anyone else has sort of done that comparison. Hark back synonyms. So the ones it's offering are flashback, harken back, mind, recall, recollect, remember, reminisce, reproduce, think of. So look at this statement here. The new stadium designed for nostalgic appeal harks back to the intimate ballparks of yore. There you go. There's those two statements in the one. See that?
Yeah.
To bring back to mind. So it's as if when you say hark back, is you're looking at a time of yore, and it's reminding you specifically of that. This thing here that you're looking at now reminds me of that. It could be positive or negative. Usually positive though. And the nearest word to it would be, I would say, nostalgic. That's very nostalgic of, you could use that interchangeably. Okay, so we've talked about it quite a bit. Are you happy now, Ilham? Does that answer your questions?
Yes, thank you, completely.
Okay. Okay. So we'll move on to the verb then, the past, future tenses and stuff like that. I haven't prepared anything specifically on that, so we'll just talk around stuff, and we'll pull up some words if necessary. So let's talk about it in the context, first of all, of the present tense. So in the present tense, you often use what's called the gerund form, which is the ing words. So I am running. Like right now I'm running, or right now I'm sitting, obviously. I am sitting is an expression about the current, the present, yeah? But I could say, to express the past tense, I was sitting. So earlier I was sitting in the conservatory. I'm still saying sitting, but I'm putting was in front of it, which means that it's something I was doing in the past. So he was sitting in the conservatory. So that's a look to the past tense. If we think about the future tense, you could say, I am going to sit in the conservatory later. I am going to. So at an indefinite period, but in the future, I intend to do that. I would say I'm going to. I could also say I have to sit in the conservatory, which is expressing the same thing, except that there's a stronger, there's something else I'm saying in that, and that is when I say I have to, is it's a requirement on me somehow for some reason, which I'm not articulating the reason. I'm just saying I have to do it. And if I wanted to add the reason, I could say I have to sit in the conservatory because I'm cold and the conservatory is warm. Now I'm giving you the reason why I have to do it. So let me pause, go back to Mona, and say, is that all making sense to you so far? And am I not speaking too quickly? I might be speaking too quickly, in which case it is your prerogative to slow me down.
It's good, teacher. Thank you.
Okay. So that's, then another word we will use that's akin to this, akin, that's a good word. Akin means similar. Is, we'll write that word down. I'll put it in the chat. Akin. Another word we would use is I will. Right? So I will is a bit like I have, except that when I say I will, It's just me that's willing it, right? So somebody the other day asked me what willing meant. Yeah, it was Diana. She was confused with this word willing. But let's talk about will first. So I will do something is a statement about the future. You know, I could say, I will retire one day. Now, I haven't said when, but I've just indicated it's in the future. You know, I haven't said when, right? I will do it. It's my intent to do it. I will do it one day. I could say, I will retire when I'm 60. Now I've told you when. And I've said I will do it. The opposite would be, you could say, I will not retire when I'm 60, right? That's the most obvious one. I will not do something. But we wouldn't say that, actually, although that makes sense, right? It makes sense, it's logical, but it's not what we would say. What we would actually say to convey that is, I won't retire when I'm 60. I won't. W-O-N apostrophe T. I won't, which means I would not. That's what we would actually say. We mean the same thing as I will not, but we express it differently. That feels a bit, in fact, does that feel a little bit inconsistent? Feels inconsistent to me too. But hey.
Like what is the, so excuse me, what is the difference there? We just used a contraction.
No, we're actually changing the word because won't is not short for will not. Sure it's not, isn't it? So let's look this up, right? So I don't get this wrong. So we'll share screen again. Come back. So if I say won't, there's wouldn't there as well. Let's do won't versus want, right? Won't is the correct way to contract will not. Won't is a type, want is a type of behavior that is specific to a person, right? Hey, you know, his want is to eat 3 times a day. It's also the wrong way to spell want. That won't. That's a very funny statement. That's whoever wrote that entry is very clever. So won't, W-O-N apostrophe T, which is what I said, is the correct way to contract will not. I will not. And so what I said to you was, if I wanted to express the negative, I will not retire when I'm 60. The way we would say it is, I won't. I won't retire when I'm 60.
So you are just using the contraction, right? The
Yeah.
contraction of will not is won't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like when we use the contraction, does it like make the sentence, it's just to short the sentence, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Like you were saying, so that we will not use I will not retire when I'm 60. You were saying that I would say I won't retire when I'm 60.
Yeah.
Both sentences are same.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So I was talking nonsense. But you'll see that wouldn't is the other thing. I would not. There we go. Won't versus wouldn't. English usage. Let's look at this. Won't is a short form of will not. Wouldn't is a short form of would not. And would is the past form of will. Won't and wouldn't are very common and formal in use, whereas will not and would not are usually formal. So the kind of rule that we apply here is when we're writing, as long as we're not coding speech, Anjali said she wouldn't do this. We would use wouldn't in that case. But if we're not coding speech, if we're writing a document, we would say, Anjali will not do this. Right? Would not is used to more express, I asked Elham, would she do X? And she said she would not. She would not do it. She refused, point blank. There's a good expression as well, point blank. Right? So if you absolutely refuse to do something, we say you refuse to do it point blank. I don't know what the etymology of that is, but that's very common. And what we were on before when we're saying hark back, everybody would know what that means, like everybody, but you wouldn't say it every day of the week. But refusing to do something I said point blank, I meant point blank. Like so. So I asked Elham, will she be in the class next week? And she said no. Now that might be because she's not available. But it could be, she could say, I'm just fed up with these classes. So she point blank refused to come. See what I mean? Hi, Nifal. How you doing? Oh, looks like Nufal is joining, but his audio isn't connected yet. Hi, Nufal. How you doing? I can't hear you. Have you connected your audio? I don't think you've been in a class before, Nufal, although you've been very active on the group, which I appreciate. All right, looks like he's connecting his audio now. Yeah, I know he's raised his hand, Anjali. Oh, sorry, it's just popping over your name as if you're telling me that. But I don't know what it means.
Sorry, sir. Did you ask something?
Yeah, it's just that the wee message popped up to say Nufal has raised his hand, but it popped up over your name as if you were telling me that. So that's why I was asking you. Sorry for the confusion. Nufal, can you hear us? It looks like he's got some connectivity issues because he's coming and going and his audio hasn't come through yet. So we'll just keep talking and hope that he joins us. Right, let's come back to will and won't and going and all of these expressions. Is everything that I've said so far correct, making sense? Anjali pointed out an error of mine in that I said won't is would not, but it's not. It's will not. And won't with an apostrophe It's not the same as W-O-N-T without an apostrophe, and they also sound different. I did the difference between won't and want and so on a few weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago. It was one of the first things I did. So won't is short for will not. It's a contraction. Nufal, can you hear us yet? So Angeli's asking me, what is the meaning of want, W-O-N-T without the apostrophe? So the answer to that is, it's got nothing to do with want whatsoever. Want, W-O-N-T, that sounds the same as W-A-N-T, right? So everyone knows what want means, right? Want, W-A-N-T.
Yeah.
But it's actually got a couple of different meanings. There's the normal definition of want. Let's do want first, then we'll do won't. Want means I desire something, right? I want another cup of coffee because this one's gotten cold.
Yeah.
Right? That's what the normal meaning of want. But another meaning of want is lacking. You know, I could say my health is wanting. It means it's lacking. Yeah. I really wanted to extend the house, but funds were wanting.
Sorry, sir, can you repeat that?
Repeat, Anjali.
Can you repeat that? You were
Yeah,
saying that.
Yeah. So the second example I gave was I wanted to extend my house, build an extension, but funds were wanting.
Okay.
Which means funds were lacking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the two meanings of want, spelled W-A-N-T. Now we come to the word that you asked about, which was want. Sounds the same to the ear, want, but it's W-O-N-T. And it means something entirely different. And what want with an O-N-T without the apostrophe means is it's your habit. It's Alan's want to go a walk every single day. It's Alan's want to read the newspaper. It's Shweta's want to eat lots of mango. So it's not a difficult word. To Elham's point, it's not ultra common, but certainly everyone would understand it. But it's not a complicated word or sophisticated word. Hi, Nufal, have you joined us? Are you hearing us on audio? So Mona says I didn't understand. So did you not understand the last bit? Which bit didn't you not understand, Mona?
Yes, teacher.
Yeah, just clarify. Rather than re-explain everything, just tell me which bit you didn't understand.
Want.
Want as in W-O-N-T or
Yes.
Or, yeah, okay. So we're clear on what want means with an A. I'll just go back over it again for clarity. Want with an A, the normal meaning is I want something, which is, you know, I want a cup of coffee. It's a desire. I'm expressing a desire. Alan wants a cup of coffee. Will somebody please go and make me a cup of coffee? Alan wants a coffee, right? That's W-A-N-T.
Yes.
There's a second meaning of want, which is something not really related to that. And well, you could say that maybe it is related, but it's used differently. It's, you would often use it with wanting, with an ing form. Sorry, my bell went there, and I'm just seeing if somebody else is answering it. Yeah, somebody else is answering the door. Want, the second meaning of want with an a, with W-A-N-T, is lacking. So when I first explained this to you guys, I used the example of the most famous psalm in the Bible is by David, and he was a shepherd. And he said, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And what that meant was he was saying, I won't have any needs. I'll never be lacking, because he was a shepherd and he looked after the sheep. And so he was using that as an analogy. And he said, well, for me personally, the Lord is my shepherd. And he said, I won't want. In other words, I will never be lacking. So that's W-A-N-T, second meaning. Is that clear? The other examples I cited were, I want to extend my house, but funds are lacking. Sorry, funds are wanting in the sense of lacking.
Yeah, yeah. And what is the expression, like the example of David one? He said that he won't want.
Yeah, yeah. When he said, I shall not want, shall is another expression of the future, right? I shall, right? He says, I shall not want. In other words, I shall not lack. As a result of the Lord being his shepherd, he felt that he was all provided for.
Yeah.
The Lord would look after him. And so he said, I will not want.
Okay.
And that is the most famous psalm in all the Bible. I mean, most people in England and America, whether they're religious or not, would know or have heard of that psalm. Everyone would have heard of that. Everyone knows the expression, the Lord is my shepherd. That's very common. Whether people believe it or not, it's another thing, but that's a very common expression. That is the most famous psalm in the Bible.
Okay.
So that is want with an A, done to death. Is that clear, Mona, before I move to want with an O? Is that clear?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay.
Thank you, teacher.
Okay. So now I will go to want with an O. And want with an O is spelled W-O-N-T, but it sounds like want with an A. It's pronounced the same. Want. But the meaning of the word is entirely different. And it's also quite distinct from won't, right? The word is want, W-O-N-T, and it's a distinct word from won't, which is W-O-N apostrophe T, which we dealt with earlier. Won't means I will not. It's a contraction of I will not.
Yeah.
So W-O-N-T, his want, my want, it means habit. So my want is to go for a walk every day. That means it's my habit. Let me just check if the new file has joined us. New file, have you joined the audio? You with us? If you're saying something, I can't hear you. So maybe you can write in the chat window, at least if you're picking me up. But if you're not hearing, then I don't. There's no point in being here. Oh, right. Hi, new file. Are you hearing me? Let's see if he responds. So want simply means habit. Not terribly common, but nor is it mysterious. Or esoteric. Or
What is that
academic.
word?
Esoteric? Esoteric? Esoteric, there's a good question. Esoteric means unusual, very unusual. Let me look it up, what that word means. It's one of these words that you say and you think, okay, what does it mean? Esoteric. Intended for or likely to be understood only by a small number of people in a specialized knowledge of interest. Now, what I said was it was not esoteric. Yeah? Let me share my screen. Esoteric, intended or likely to be understood by only a small number of people with specialized knowledge. So, my guys in work are all in computing. And within that, there are some of them specialize in quantum computing, which is very niche. And so they would use lots of terms that are esoteric. They're locked to terms that are only used in that domain, of specialized knowledge. So that's what esoteric means. Is that clear? I also use the word niche there, which is a French word. Do you know the word niche?
Yeah, we discussed that in earlier class.
Okay. Sometimes pronounced niche. Some people like to pronounce it as niche.
Yeah.
I hate that pronunciation.
Yeah. Niche. It's
But
like niche.
I say niche, which is the French pronunciation. It is a French word, niche.
Niche, yeah.
But lots of people pronounce it as niche. That's obviously not wrong. It's very common. Just pronounce it as niche.
And there is like one more word, like some people say often and some people say often. And I'm like very confused. What do I use? Sometimes I use often and sometimes I use often.
Often and often with a T.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the correct pronunciation is with a T, always.
Often.
Often. That's the correct word. The other is just lazy. Often. You know, if you say often, you're being lazy in your enunciation. That's not a word. It's often.
Okay.
We all see each other often in these English classes. And we also talk in the group chat often, likely every day, often. Right, so that's that. So we've dealt with some tenses. Okay. Nufal says he can hear me. But we can't hear your voice. Can you speak, Nufal?
Hello.
Hi, we good to hear your voice. That's cool. I wasn't
sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
How are you, sir?
Very well, thank you. It's good to see you and see you join the class. Thank you for that. And thanks for all your many contributions you've made. You're only a recent joiner to the group, but you've made very strong contributions already.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
This is what we like, keen students. Okay, so this is a very informal session. Basically answering questions that are coming from the group. So we dealt there with have and would, and we've done with the short questions. And then Anjali, you had some questions in on vocabulary.
Yeah, sir.
Do you want to ask them?
Actually, my problem is like, I write all the words that I learned, and I don't use that new vocabularies whenever I speak.
Yeah.
I stick to the basic vocabulary, like
Yeah.
whatever
Okay.
I know.
Okay. So the way you fix that is practicing, right? You deliberately try and use these words. So let me look at some of the exercises that we have done. And I'll read out some of the words from the exercise, and then we'll talk about using them. So on the exercise that I sent you all on the 21st, the words there were rapprochement, noggin, kinda, sorta, reckoning, historicity, ephemeral, and expedient. So those were the words. Let me share on the screen so that everybody can see that. Actually, that would be easier. So let me share screen again. Right. So do you see these words here? Can you all see that? These are the words that we used on the 21st. I sent you all that. Rapprochement. The next three words are slang words. Therefore, we wouldn't encourage usage of these, but you need to know what they mean. And what does somebody mean when they say that? And then reckoning, historicity, ephemeral, and expedient are all words. Historicity would not be that common, but all the others would be common. So let me just go through the meanings again, and then we'll talk about how we say them, how we use these words. So rapprochement, you can tell by even the way I'm pronouncing it, it's a French word, right? Rapprochement, rapprochement. It's a bit nasally, rapprochement. And this is the idea when you have two groups that are at war, enmity, and so on. And if these two parties or countries or whatever approach one another and come to some kind of agreement between them, we call that a rapprochement. Rapprochement. So a similar word is reconciliation. You would use reconciliation more in the context of personal, if it was personal animosity. So Elham said something to really upset me, and I was really upset with her for a couple of weeks. But then we had a really good discussion and we were reconciled. Yeah. But you would use rapprochement in the context of countries. And there's overlap in these things, right? You can use them in either scenario, but you could say that at the moment there are very strained relations between Israel and Iran.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so a headline could be somebody came in and did some mediation, and now there's been a rapprochement between these two countries, which have been old enemies.
Okay.
I'm not getting into politics here, by the way, but I mean, I'm just doing this to illustrate the usage of the word. Does that make sense? Is my definition and usage clear, Angela, if you asked the question?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So excuse me, I have a question. You used one word, headline or something.
Headline? Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. So headline.
Headline is, yeah. Okay.
You carry on, Angela. You finish your sentence.
So whatever I know, like headline is a word like whenever the news comes on the TV, like they narrate the headlines, just the headlines of the news, right?
Correct. That's exactly right. So the headline comes from newspapers. It comes from that terminology where newspapers will use very large text, very bold text, very large text, to sort of signal the key messages. You know, so, you know, in 1948, the headlines were end of World War II.
Mm-hmm.
The headlines in 2020 have been dominated by COVID and the pandemic. So the headlines are the top news items. That's what the headlines are.
Yeah.
Another term that I was going to teach you, I've added to my list, is stop press. You heard of that one? Stop press.
Can you write that word in the
Yeah, I'll
chat?
write it down. Sure. Yeah, stop press. And this also comes from the newspaper industry. And it's where you have something that's so important in the news, you're going to stop the printing presses, right? Because the printing presses that run the news start at a certain time, right? You know, at a certain hour, I don't know what hour it is, but let's say the newspapers start running at 1 a.m. in the morning to produce the newspapers that go out at 6 o'clock in the morning, the day's news. Now, very occasionally, you know, something emerges that is so significant that they want to stop the presses rolling. They're going to throw away all those newspapers and they will start again because they want to change the headline on the front page.
Yeah.
So if there's something like really dramatic of worldwide significance, they will do that, right? So like at the time of the Watergate scandal, for example, when Nixon was impeached, depending on when that happened. And so because of that, this term has come into usage, which is stop press. You apply it in all sorts of contexts to say, hey, listen, this is really important. Stop press. We're not involved in the industry. We're not creating newspapers and we're not asking the presses to stop. But we just say stop press as a preface to something that we're going to say, which is really important.
It's a metaphor, right?
It's a metaphor. We're not really using it like a metaphor. We're not saying something is something else. Maybe an analogy might be a better word, or maybe an analogy or expression rather than a metaphor. A metaphor is when you say something is something else. She is a monster. She's a monster is a metaphor. And if I describe she as that, you don't want to be she, yeah?
Yeah.
And that's obviously just passing comment on what I think of somebody's personality or maybe what people think. Okay, so that was that. So that was that word. Another word we used there was ephemeral.
Ephemeral, yeah.
Which is a wonderful and a beautiful word. I really like ephemeral. So if I was to go and grab my deodorant spray just now and spray it, instead of spraying it under my arm, I just spread it here. You wouldn't see it for very long, right? It would just be here for a moment, like a vapor, and then it would be gone. So that is ephemeral.
Yeah, temporary.
Yeah, it's like steam out of the kettle. You can see it and then it's gone. So that is the root meaning of ephemeral. Now we would then use that word to describe anything that is fleeting, anything that is transitory for a very short period of time. So I would like to think that my interest in Spanish is not ephemeral. I want to get fluent. That's not the best example in the whole world. That's just one I just cooked up there. But you know what I mean by that. You know what I'm trying to say. I wasn't feeling too good yesterday, and I wondered, did I have COVID? But it was just ephemeral. It was gone. I'm fine today. So that was ephemeral. Another word we used in that exercise was expedient.
Expedient means speedy process, right? To speed up the process, to speed up something.
Yeah, yeah. Not always. That's one of the meanings, right? You would say, if you wanted to speed something up, we would say, using Hello Talk is very expedient. For learning another language, right? It's expedient. Nation 1 and Nation 2 are in talks. And Nation 2 got backed by this other Nation 3, is a big country, and that really expedited the process. When I say that, I'm definitely meaning speed up. But when you say expedient normally, you don't mean speed up. You could use it that way, but normally when you say expedient, you're saying something is appropriate. So I'm dressed casually today in my t-shirt, but tomorrow I'm going to meet the Queen because I'm getting an award, and it's not expedient for me to be dressed like this. I would need to put on a shirt and tie and my best togs. It would not be expedient for me to wear this. Yeah. Make sense? Yeah. So I'm using it there in the sense of appropriate. Is that clear?
So can I say, like, when we use expedient as an adjective, then the meaning is like appropriate. And when I use it as a verb, then the meaning is to speed up. Like
yes. Yes.
Increase.
Yes. Okay. Again, a very astute comment, Anjali. Yeah, well done.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so then if I go to the next exercise, the words there were kid on. Now I think I've answered that. Elham also asked me that, and I think we've dealt with that. Everyone's happy with kid on, what kid on means?
Yeah, and I know the story behind that.
Yeah,
very,
we dealt with that. Very interesting story. Yeah. Then we dealt with broad church. Do you remember what broad church meant?
Yeah, I know. Like, if an organization has like different kind of beliefs, if I have like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. It's not actually talking about a church. We just use the expression broad church. Describe any organization which has a wide range of views, and in particular, narrow views and broad views, right? Narrow and broad. So some people are very stickler for certain fine details, and they're so much stickler for their fine details that they don't get on with the other people who take a broader view in the world, right? You know, this is just something in society, right? It's everywhere. But if you were to describe a broad church is not all those with people with wide views. That's not what you mean. When you say broad church, you're saying it's a church which has people with broad views and narrow views, and they can come together, right? So you could say that the group of people that came together to fight against the government was a very broad church.
Yeah.
Yeah. I read an interesting obituary today, and it was the name of the guy. I'll actually look it up and tell you his name. He was Indian, and he was the, I read this in the Times. No, it was the Telegraph. Or was it yesterday? Maybe it was yesterday. Wednesday. I'll find it. And this guy was a secretary to Mahatma Gandhi. And he's just dead. He's just died. And he said he was chosen because he was one of the very few people that Mahatma Gandhi could find that actually spoke English. So he really helped him in all his communications with people abroad. And apparently all of the communications were written down and scribbled down on pieces of paper. They never bought new paper, they just used old paper all the time. And anyway, this guy kept all these papers in a suitcase since Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated. So he's had them for decades. And he offered them to some heritage group in India, and they didn't want them. So then he decided to sell them so they could build a temple somewhere, auction them off. And so they went to a London auction. And when they come up at auction, the Indian government objected and said they were like property of India. And so the sale didn't go through. Isn't that interesting?
What is the name of that guy?
I'm going to tell you. Right. So that's his picture. You see that?
Yeah.
So his name is Venkataram Kalayanam. I could share that article with you on WhatsApp, but I don't know if you could read it. I think you might need a subscription.
Okay.
Sometimes they'll let you read one or two articles, and then you hit the sort of paywall thing. I subscribe to Telegraph. I will try and share it with you. It might give you a bit of it, but or you might be able to find it on the web. But I find it absolutely fascinating. It told you quite a bit about Mahatma Gandhi and, you know, sort of man he was, and it tells you he didn't like Modi at all. He really hates Modi, and he said you'd be better under the British Raj than under Modi. Very interesting. I find it really interesting. You know, just this, you know, he's very outspoken, and he quotes Mahatma Gandhi. So that's him there. It's a picture of him with Mahatma Gandhi. And one of the most interesting things he said in it was Gandhi said he blamed the British for splitting India in two. He really held that against Britain. But he said things like, I have no desire to live to see the ruin of India through fratricide. I would rather die than witness further violence. So listen to this. This is a really interesting quote, right? The correspondence also included drafts of letters from Gandhi to Earl Mountbatten of Burma. He's a really big wig over here, right? Where he was, he's dead now long ago. But the last British Viceroy of India, placing much of the blame on the British. Now, this is where he quotes. He quotes, I pointed out the initial mistake of the British being party to splitting India in two, he wrote. It is not possible to undo the mistake. But the very admirable doctrine of fair play, ... demands that I do not help the mistaken party to fancy that the mistake was no mistake.
I didn't get the last.
All right, I'll read it again.
words.
That really impressed me. That made a big impression on me when I read that. So, and I'll read slowly as well for everybody's benefit. So he said, I pointed out the initial mistake of the British being party to splitting India into two. So that's Gandhi saying his view was the British were really heavily involved in that, right? Either it was their idea or I don't know. I mean, because you had Pakistan, you had all these sort of political. I'm not into all of the politics of that. I'm quite interested in it. I will read up on that. But he says he pointed out how involved the British were in that scheme. He said it is not possible to undo the mistake. So he's saying it was a mistake to do that, but it's not possible to fix it. You can't rejoin these two nations again and make India and Pakistan one. They're forever bifurcated, right?
Yeah.
Bifurcated is a good word. Come back to that. So he said it's not possible to undo the mistake. But this is the really interesting bit. But the very admirable doctrine of fair play. So does everybody understand what fair play is?
Yeah.
We talk about this. Here's an analogy. We say cricket. Cricket is a game where there's very clear rules. And in India, you guys know this because we taught you guys cricket, right? And then you came to beat us and show us how it should be done, right? So you understand that the rules in cricket are really important and the way you play the game. And so we say in Britain, that's not quite cricket. And what we mean by that is we're saying that's not fair play, right? So Gandhi's saying he agrees with the doctrine of fair play, okay? Or he's saying that very admirable doctrine, he's agreeing with that doctrine demands that I do not help the mistaken party, Britain, to fancy that the mistake was no mistake.
Okay.
In other words, he's saying people in Britain don't want you telling them that they made a mistake. Politically, that doesn't, they don't want that. That's like washing dirty linen in public, right? They don't want you saying we made a mistake. But what Gandhi's saying is, I refuse, sir, to say that it was not a mistake, because it was a mistake. Now, that comment, to me, I don't know much about Mahatma Gandhi, but in reading that comment today, he went up 2-3 notches in my estimation just because of what he said there. What was behind it and the way he articulated the thought.
Yeah, in India, like people have like different views about Mahatma Gandhi. Some people really adore him, and some people like, okay, like he was the reason who like divided the nation into two like countries on the basis of religion.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we won't go down there anymore because it will get very political. We'll be discussing Nehru and all of that. And I don't know enough to have an intelligent conversation on it, but it's maybe something we could talk about. That's the kind of thing that would be an interesting discussion, as long as we don't fall out with one another over it. I don't have any strong views on it because I'm complete ignoramus, to be honest with you. I would like to know more about it. Now, let me pull in. I've got 2 Indians and I've got 2 Iranians on the call. So let me defer now to Mona and Elham and just make sure that you guys were getting everything that I've just been saying. And make sure you're still interested and not bored stiff. Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up from Elham. Thank you for that. Mona, were you following me there, my dear?
Yes, teacher.
Yes, okay. So I do like when I'm speaking to people, from different countries to talk about the countries. So I like talking about Iran and Tehran and Persia and stuff, when I'm talking to Persians, because I find that really interesting. And I find India very interesting as well. And although India has a very ancient history too, I know more about it in modern times than ancient times. But in terms of Persia, I know much more about the old times. I could talk relatively intelligently about, actually, a book has just arrived for me. I haven't unpacked it yet, and it's about Persia.
Oh,
It just arrived. I think when the doorbell went, I think that's what it was. Let me go get it. As we would say in Britain, talk amongst yourselves. Do you use that expression, talk amongst yourselves? Have you heard that?
about?
By anything. I'm going to go do something else for 30 seconds. So talk amongst yourselves means just entertain yourselves. Excuse me. I'm saying excuse me politely.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
I'll be right back. I'm pretty sure this is my book in Persia.
Beautiful silence.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, hi. I'm the only male here.
Oh, yeah. And you're from India.
Yeah,
What
I'm
is
from
it?
India. I'm from Kerala.
Naufal. Okay.
Yeah, Nofal.
Okay.
Nofal Ahmad. You're from?
Newfal is probably intimidated by all these women.
Yeah.
He's outnumbered. I was right, by
I'm
the
from
way.
Bihar.
Look at this. Look at this. This is going to become a prized possession. Look at this. Can you see that?
What is it?
No.
No, it's because of the light, you see.
The
The
Persians.
Persians.
The Persians.
The Persians. Look at the gold.
Us.
And it's in a special cover. See that?
Yeah, it is.
This is a special book. Look at the cover of that.
Oh,
Oh, nice.
Takhta Jamshid.
Look at the size of that. And all the photographs in it. Look at this. Look at this.
Yes.
It's got nearly 400 pages about the Persian Empire of yesteryear. Cyrus, it's all about Cyrus and Darius and Amenhotep and all that. So you see, so my interest in Persia is not ephemeral.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, you prove it.
And it's expedient that I go and buy a book.
Yeah.
And get fully informed so that I can have intelligent conversation with you intelligent people. And it's not like I'm not interested, but by saying I'm interested in Persia doesn't mean I'm not interested in India, because I've been to India 5 times. And not many Ferengis can boast that. But I've never been to Iran yet. Whether it really happens or not, it is become an aspiration of mine. There's a good word that we learned recently, an aspiration. What does that mean? Who wants to say what aspiration means?
Is it mean like the desire to
Yeah.
like do something?
Yes. Yes. But it's a higher thing than a desire. Like I would desire to eat my supper. which will be made shortly. Yeah. So I would desire. I don't aspire to eat my supper. I just desire it. But a lot of people would aspire to be famous. I don't. I don't. But lots of people do. A lot of people aspire to be rich. Right? I don't. But lots of people do. So aspirations are higher order levels of desire. Yeah. You know, I could say, let's say I'm really into the environment and say, I aspire to make a difference in terms of the climate change. I could aspire to, I can't fix it on my own, but I could aspire to make a change. Greta Thunberg aspires to do that as well and is making a big impact for incredible for one so young.
Yeah, and she's just like 12 or 13-year-old kid.
Yeah. Nifal, you should put your hand down. You've got your hand raised. You should put it down because it's attracting my attention. Unless you want to, you are trying to draw my attention. Can you see that? If you go to reactions and then put your hand down. See, I can raise my hand and then I can lower my hand. See that? You should do that unless you are wanting my attention. You got me? You with me? Well, Nufal is maybe away for a coffee.
Maybe. Okay, so
maybe we were talking about Iran too much. Are you answering me here?
I have a question, sir. Excuse me.
Okay, go ahead.
Actually, today I was reading about the modern history, and in that we have to read like how the British came and all this stuff. So there was this term, Britannia. Like she's the goddess or something of Britain. I can try to show you this. Okay, I'm sending you the picture of this thing.
Okay. How are you sending it? Are you sending it?
I'm sending it on the WhatsApp.
On WhatsApp?
Yeah, maybe it will work. Okay.
You maybe meant empress rather than goddess. Victoria, are you talking about Victoria?
No, Britannia. I have sent you that.
Okay. All right, so I will share what you sent with me with the rest of the team, right? So let me share that. There we go. So everybody can see it. There we go. Right. Pull up the screen. Brahmins offering the Shastras to Britannia, frontispiece of the first map produced by James Rennell. Rennell was asked by Robert Clive to produce maps of Hindustan. An enthusiastic supporter of British conquest of India, Rennell saw preparation of maps as essential to the process of domination. The picture he tries to suggest that Indians willingly gave over their ancient texts to Britannia, the symbol of British power, as if asking her to become the protector of the Indian culture. Okay, this is very interesting. I mean, I didn't know any of this. I can totally believe it. And this is very bad practice in the empire days of Britain, when Britain kind of ruled the world and thought it was okay to land in Australia and put up a flag and say, this is ours now, or America, this is ours now. Yeah, why not? It's our God-given right, right? And all this nonsense, including India. So what you're reading there is, there is no goddesses in Britain, right? We don't have goddesses. We don't have any idols. at all. Well, that's not exactly true, but no real idols, right? So we would never speak of goddesses. But it looks like in that article that they were trying to, as part of the ruse, have we done the word ruse before? As part of the ruse of trying to take over India and the propaganda around that, we are talking about Britannia as a goddess, right? But this is, none of this is true. No Britons believe in that, right? And what that article was saying was that they were saying that Indians were very happy to sacrifice to this Britannia, this goddess. Well, you've got 90 million gods, so why not have another one called Britannia, representing Britain, right? And he's trying to indicate that somehow the Indians wanted that, but of course they didn't. I understand that. When I was at Calcutta last year, I went to the museum there. I think there's a very interesting museum at Calcutta that talks a lot about, because Calcutta was really the center of British rule and the center of the East India Tea Company and their operations. There's a huge amount of history there, and it was absolutely fascinating walking around that museum. And it was hard to make much progress because everyone was asking for my picture. It was really, really weird. That would never happen here. But walking around there, whether it was Indians, don't see white people very often, but all sorts of people wanted to take a selfie with me. It was so weird. I'm like saying to them, I'm not even good looking. What do you want my picture for? But they wanted my picture. It was really weird. It was a wee bit, when it happens to girls, they get really creeped out about that. But, you know, I realized that it was quite innocent. You know, it was quite innocent. You know,
they were just, just to brag off, like just to show that, okay, I met this foreigner or something, this white guy, and they were just trying to get the picture to show off in their friends and family.
Yeah, maybe.
It's really strange. Like for us, it's really strange, right? Because we're just ordinary people, right? Just like you guys, we're just all ordinary people, right? We're just ordinary people. So as we're walking around, you know, nobody asked to take our picture, you know, ever. You know, it just wouldn't happen. People would do that with celebrities, you know. So like Leonardo DiCaprio, loads of people want a picture with him because he's famous, right? But ordinary people like me, it doesn't happen, you know. So, but there it felt like you were a celebrity. It's a bit weird. But getting back to my point, there's a tremendous, interesting history there. Really interesting history. Right. We started at 4 o'clock. It's now 6. We've been going for about 2 hours, albeit we had a false start, which was all my fault. So we're about 10 minutes short of that. But we've been going for quite a while now, so I'll probably call it a day there. Unless anyone has, I'm going to use a good expression that we use in Britain, which is, has anyone got any burning questions? A burning question is a question that you have to ask.
Okay. I don't have any. Like okay. I haven't done the homework yet. Like
no, that's fine. That's
the
fine.
Last week homework.
No worries. No worries. Next time I see you guys, I will have read some of this book, and I will regale you with interesting observations. I'm really excited to read this book. Mona, you're going to say?
Very good. Teacher, what's the name of writer of this book?
J.M. Cook.
Okay.
So I was actually reading another book about Daniel the
Okay.
prophet, and this book was referred to in that book. And that's what made me think, oh, that looks interesting. Then I had a look on Amazon, and the price of this book was like a lot of money. And this is a second-hand version I got quite cheap. It was under £20. And it's very good condition. So I really feel I've got a bargain. This will never leave me. I will have this book now until I die. I don't get rid of my books. It's one of those. It's one of those things I just keep. We have got an expression. I'm a bit of a magpie, and the magpie bird steals things, or steals them. And so if you say you're a bit of a magpie, it doesn't mean you steal things, but it means you collect things.
Okay.
I don't collect much, but I do collect books. And one day I'll do the phone. I'll take this meeting in my study, and I'll show you my book collection.
Yeah.
And I have seen.
Teacher, you mean that? Excuse me. Excuse me. You mean that you are a collectioner? Yes, collectioner.
I collect books.
Of
I collect books, all sorts of books, but not fiction. I do read some fiction, but I basically only read fiction on holiday. But anything to do with history, Bible study, most of my books are Bible related, to be honest, because that's my keenest interest. And anything to do with that. So like Bible lands and people's mentioned in the Bible. So the Persians are big in the Bible, right? The whole book of Esther she was the queen of Persia, right? She was married to Artaxerxes. Very interesting story there. If you don't know it, I'll tell you another day what that story is. I can't go into it now, but it's very interesting. If you haven't read it, you need to read it. It's just absolutely fascinating. And it's history, it's true. And in fact, the Jews celebrate that events of that book in a feast called the Feast of Purim. Purim, P-U-R-I-M, like pure, but not pure. Purim. Because they were all going to be destroyed, killed, all of them. And through her bravery, she said, "If I perish, I perish." Even she, as the queen, wasn't allowed to go and see the king unannounced. She couldn't go into his presence. She had to have an invite in. And so she was breaking protocol by going to see the king. And she said before she did it, "If I perish, I perish." So that's quite a famous quote. "If I perish, I perish." And she went in to see the king, and of course, he reached out the scepter, which means "you're welcome." And then the story's very interesting, but I can't go into it just now. I will leave you with that cliffhanger.
What is that? You just throw the big word.
Yeah. So if you're reading a book, some books, especially popular novels, at the end of the chapter, they say something that's super exciting that's going to make you jump to the next chapter, keep you reading. Or an episode in television ends on a cliffhanger. You don't know what happens next. You can't wait for the next episode. Okay. That's called a cliffhanger.
Okay, I got it.
That's a very common expression here. Very common. So I'll leave you with a cliffhanger, which means I'm leaving you with, oh, I really wish I knew the rest of that story. I'm going to ask you about that next time.
Maybe next time on next Zoom meeting, we will get to know like some of the stories from that book.
Yeah, I can do that. No problem.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I will bid you all good evening. I will now go and have my supper. I actually don't have a Spanish class tonight, which is quite good. So I can have a bit of a break. And I've got about 5 hours to wait now before the next class, which is at 11 p.m. It's 6 p.m. here. And my next class, which is for all the Colombians and those in America, is at 11 p.m. my time. So I'll have a wee bit of a rest now. And I wee read at my book.
You can
Did
spend
you know
your me time.
Did you know I'm interested in Persia? Did you know that?
No.
Okay, guys.
You are like interested in history, sir, right?
Yeah.
You are like
yeah.
interested in all sorts of history.
Have you heard the quote? I promise this is the last thing I'm going to say tonight. I'm sure you know this quote. If you don't know this quote, you need to know this quote.
Mhm.
Those that don't learn the lessons from the past are condemned to repeat them.
Yeah.
You heard that quote?
Nope.
Brilliant quote and very true.
Yeah.
I will put the official quote and the person who came up with it on the forum, because that's a really good one. And you think about it, those who don't learn the lessons from the past are condemned to repeat them. Repeat it. So in other words, the mistakes that people made, like, you know, what did the Greeks know? What did the Romans know? Right? What did the Babylonians know? Are we going to make the same mistakes over again? Well, you need to know what they learned in order not to make the same mistakes again.
Yeah.
And this is very relevant in modern business, because businesses have what I call corporate amnesia. They forget. They're like senile. They forget what they had for breakfast. They certainly don't remember what happened yesterday, and they don't remember what happened last year. I could write a thesis on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's very important that businesses understand what is happening and what has happened. What is the state of play now? And how did we get here? What did we make some mistakes? Oh, we don't want to talk about mistakes. Oh, don't you? Why don't you want to talk about mistakes? Because if you don't talk about mistakes, you'll never learn any lessons, right? But in the corporate world, people don't want to talk about that. That's a discussion for another day.
Okay.
Well, I'll bid you all good evening. I'll go and get my supper now.
Good evening to you too, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good evening.
Bye now.
Thank you, teacher.
Bye, Mona.
Bye bye.
Bye,
Bye.
Nifal.
Bye.
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 Bye,
Anjali.
sir.
Bye.
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 Bye,
Sir.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye everybody.
Bye. Bye.